is Andy Nelson, and I'm New Signature's Director of Learning. What we're going to be going over today is a quick overview of SharePoint 2013 as well as SharePoint Online. And we're also specifically going to be covering the training offerings that New Signature can provide around them. So I'm going to start by giving just a quick overview of New Signature's training division, how they're uniquely positioned. We're going to proceed by giving an overview of what SharePoint is and what it does. And then we're going to go right into a demonstration on SharePoint Online. My colleague Chris Sheridan is on the call. He's a seasoned IT professional on the Microsoft stack, and he's going to work through some very common business scenarios on how we can leverage SharePoint Online and SharePoint 2013 to accomplish our business goals. So, at the bottom of everyone's screen, you should see two tabs. One says Content Stage and one says Q&A. On the Content Stage tab is our presentation, so that's where you can see the slides. And if you do have a question, you can click the Q&A tab and enter it there so we can answer it for you. So, New Signature is a Microsoft partner, but we're uniquely positioned in that space as not only a systems integrator partner, but also a learning partner. The difference that makes is that when we're delivering training, it's not merely from an educator who's read a book or played with a product in a lab. All of our trainers are pulled from our real-world IT consultants that are practicing professionals. So that allows you to benefit from the pragmatic guidance they can give you from their real-world experience deploying and supporting the Microsoft technologies every day. So, before we get started on the demo, I'm just going to give a quick overview of what SharePoint is so we can make sure everyone is on the same page. So SharePoint allows us to share, collaborate, organize, and discover. It's Microsoft's collaboration platform. So in terms of sharing, it allows us to publish content directly to SharePoint right from any of our Office applications or even from a browser, whether we're inside the organization or outside of our organization's walls. We can do this from any computer. It allows us to collaborate more easily than ever because we no longer need to email attachments back and forth in order to collaborate on the same document. With SharePoint Online or SharePoint 2013, we can actually co-author the same document. And what that means is that up to 10 of us are able to work on the same document at the same time in real time, and we can see the changes that everyone else is making. It has some unique features to show us what components of the document everyone is working on, as well as who else is working on the document with us and what they're editing so we don't step on each other's toes. This unique functionality really eliminates the versioning problems that we run into by sending documents back and forth over email. It allows us to organize our work better by keeping all of our projects and tasks in the right places, and then we can stay connected with our team members by quickly spinning up a new team site in minutes to track our meeting notes and documents all in one place. We can even sync our documents from SharePoint libraries to our desktop if you're more comfortable interacting with them that way. And then finally, it improves the amount of information we're able to discover about our organization. We can quickly connect with the right people across the organization by easily discovering who has the expertise we need, as well as the past projects and documents that they've worked on so we can quickly reach out to them. Robust tagging, metadata, and search features make it easy to find exactly what you're looking for and even get recommendations on what types of content, documents, and people that you should be following in SharePoint to stay up to date. So before we go into our demo, I'm just going to very briefly cover the difference between SharePoint Online and SharePoint 2013. Already, I'm sure you've heard me mention both. They have almost feature parity. They're very similar. SharePoint 2013 is the latest offering of the SharePoint server technology from Microsoft. SharePoint Online is the Microsoft's cloud-based hosted offering of SharePoint. It's available standalone or as a part of Office 365. Since it's a part of the Office 365 package, it's hosted by Microsoft. You pay for it on a subscription basis, and you don't keep the servers in your building. The servers are going to be run by Microsoft, and you just subscribe to that service. SharePoint 2013 allows you to have the same functionality, but you buy the software as an upfront investment. You purchase the hardware to run it on, and you run it inside your own data centers. So they have typically feature parity there. There are a few limitations that you'll run into, but for most organizations, unless you're doing specific development or public-facing websites, then they're going to be the same either way, SharePoint Online or SharePoint 2013. All right, so now instead of talking about SharePoint, we're actually going to dive in and demo it for you. We're going to go through the day in the life of a SharePoint user and show you really the breadth of what it can accomplish and how many different business challenges you can solve with it. So Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you for that. Everyone, here's Chris Sheridan. He's one of our senior consultants, and he's going to give you a SharePoint demo.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. So we're just swapping over now, and everyone should be able to see now my desktop. Please remember there's the Q&A tab at the bottom, so if there are any questions, feel free to put them in there. Andy and I will be monitoring that as we go throughout the presentation today, so definitely remember to put your questions in there. So when we look at SharePoint, we talk about all this functionality and sort of that user perspective and that day in the life. You know, we really want to, let's take a scenario, one that I think a lot of us can relate to. So I'm logged in now to my Office 365 tenancy, and I'm logged in as Karen Berg. So Karen Berg is an account manager at our fictitious company, Contoso.com. And Karen, on her way into work in the morning, finds out from her boss, Julian, that Karen needs to take over an account, Northwind Traders, because the current person has gone out. And we can all relate because we've all walked into the office at the beginning of the day with one thought in mind as to what our day was going to look like, only to find out that our day was going to go in a completely different direction. So how is Karen going to get the information she needs in order to start to make use of this account, or to start to be able to interact with a customer? And there's a bunch of different tools that can be involved in this process, from Outlook, from CRM, and different pieces and components. But today we're going to focus on the SharePoint, the social, and the connection. So Karen finds out she's taking over and that she needs to get a new proposal out for a new contract. And how is she going to do this? So Karen sets up, and like the rest of us, starts her day in her email and sees this wonderful email from Julian, and she sees some different messages come through, and this is the traditional way we would get information, right? Stuff delivered to us as an attachment, and email versioning, and the old way we would do things. Well, we can see now that Karen's actually been given access to a couple of different things. So Karen has received a couple of notifications as a user that she's been granted access to a group mailbox, and we'll see that later. And she's been given access to different conversations and different sites within the organization, but all of that's coming to her in notifications via email. And I think that's the most important thing to see, is that, you know, most users, this is where they start their day, so we want to make sure we're getting them that data where they live. So this is where she's going to start in her email. So the first thing she wants to check out, that's kind of part of this whole social and collaborative environment we've created, is Yammer. So we'll spend just 20 seconds real quick. She goes into Yammer. She wants to look at what's going on. So she can click on the Northwind Traders account, which she was just granted access to, and you can see, you know, she can see all that status update. And one of the first things she sees here is that Alan met with the Northwood Traders marketing department, and they have the same marketing plan for US and India. Well, those are very different markets, so that gives Karen a great amount of concern. And look, because this is here, and it wasn't an email thread that went on with the previous account owner, which may have been sort of locked down or only visible to those people who are on the email, Karen, as someone who's coming in to take over last minute, can now get access to some of this historical data and see what's going on and get some of that history and understand what the approach is. So then she jumps over to her collaboration portal, right? I'm going to try and avoid use product names here, right? Her collaboration portal. And so she's got her landing page here, which has access to, all sorts of information about her company, what's going on, what's happening today. And she can see that there are the different account teams, and she was granted access to the Northwind Traders site. So that Northwind Trader site she jumps to, and what's on the Northwind Trader site? Well, we can see that same social information, right? Now, we showed it to you in Yammer, and what you're seeing here is just sort of out of the box SharePoint without the Yammer component of just an out of the box SharePoint list or news feed. They're very similar. Yammer can do a little more. It's a little more intuitive. I think it's a little prettier, and I think we'll see with the next release of SharePoint, they were talking about this at SharePointCon, you'll see the two more blended together. You can embed Yammer as a SharePoint web part now, but you'll actually see them out of the box where this news feed looks and feels more like Yammer. But she can go ahead and post an update, thanks, and I hate hashtags. So again, the reason we put in hashtags and different information, you can see as soon as I put that in, that became a highlighted item that now I can click on and go find all of the other areas where someone may have entered that in, or I can click on someone's name. These are all hyperlinks now where I can bring up data and search on that data. So again, bringing some of that search into the social component. So what else can Karen do for her site? So she can pull up her dashboards. So now in the case of our SharePoint demo site, we're pulling this from an ERP system on the back end. So we've got our financial data on the back end, and Karen as a user is being presented this data in some nice Visio charts, as to units sold or the overall margin on price, or and again, you can move around and make these as pretty as you want, and how many units did we actually sell, and what's our target goals. Now, this data exists elsewhere, but again, it's about bringing the information to the user where they live. Karen, as a sales account manager, doesn't have access to our ERP system, or doesn't have direct access to our ERP system. So how do I present that data to her in a way in which she can consume it without having to either buy the license for the ERP system and or teach her or train her on the ERP system? Here you go. We now start presenting that data to users in a context, in an area that they're used to receiving it. So next we can look at some of the other items we have over here. So we have a notebook. So for those of you on the call who are big OneNote users, right? If you are a OneNote user, you'll find this feature pretty useful in that we now have it embedded into the browser. So right now I've pulled up our Northwind Traders site. I can go ahead and start making edits to this. I can edit in OneNote. I can edit in OneNote Online. And so I can start doing my edits either in the browser or in the full application. So again, the full applications are always going to give you more functionality, right? They're thick-based clients installed locally. They're just going to have more features and functions than a purely online application at this point. So, but if you're making those simple edits that most of us are making, just taking notes or reviewing notes or making a few edits or changes, need to print something out real quick. Again, we have all of that functionality here, and you'll notice that the ribbon bar is very similar to that online as to that of the on-prem version. Now, what you'll notice you're missing from OneNote is the drawing capability, but that's okay. If you want to do that, you can just open it up into full-blown OneNote. Again, any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. Pardon me. So now Karen's looked at some of the information. She's reviewed some of the notes. She wants to go ahead and see if she's got any similar contracts or similar things that she's done in the past. So she pulls up her own personal OneDrive. Again, this is part of that SharePoint world, particularly when we're talking in Office 365. we're talking about that personal storage. So we can see what are the documents Karen's opened recently. Does she have anything in her own inbox that would relate to this? And no, Karen doesn't have a lot of stuff in her own personal OneDrive, so she is there's nothing here that's going to help her. Now there's other ways to access your own personal information or these document libraries, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But right now you notice we're doing everything in the browser. What that gives us is also some device flexibility, because we can go from our tablet to our phone to our laptop, and all of this data is available to us because everything we've done is in the browser. All right, so Karen's, checked her own area and she doesn't have anything good. So now she's going to want to go to her documents library, the documents library for this site, because she needs to figure out what's going on and how to create this. So here we are in that document library. So we can see the different documents related to Northwind Traders. We can click on any one of these documents and we just get that quick preview. Again, think about it as a user. How many times have you opened up a file only to realize it wasn't the correct one? So with the document preview feature, we're able to go through and look at the different charts and Power Pivot tables of a document or of a Word document or a Visio to figure out, is this the right document before I go and open it. You're also seeing in here I have some presence icons that show up. So I can go ahead and instant message somebody and get their presence right from within this window. I could call them, I could IM them, do a video call, whatever I need to do. And that's that integration with Link we're seeing that's going to come through. So when we're looking at what else we can do, we have this link that appears now here at the bottom. And when we looked at our inbox earlier, we saw the old way of sharing files, which was just to attach them to an email. And we all know the inherent flaws that come with that we now end up with 10 versions of the document that are floating around in our inbox. We keep forwarding them around. Do I have the latest copy? Who does? 2 different people making edits at once. It gets messy trying to figure out and reconcile what the right version is. Well, now, instead of sending out the attachment, what we do is we send out a link to the document. So as a user, we're presenting that because this is one of the most common things users want to do. We put it right front and center for them. Here is the link to share this document. They can also share it, if permissions are granted, outside the organization. So simply by clicking on the share button, that's going to pull up. And do I want to, again, get the link again and send out a link, whether it be a view-only link or an edit, or do I want to invite people? So now we're logged into our demo tenancy, but I could send it outside to my new signature email address, which is outside the company, and go ahead and decide, do I want to require this person to sign in? Do I want to require this to be a live ID? Do I want to send them the email? What permissions do I want to give them? And again, this can be enabled and disabled per site, so maybe there are some content libraries that you're going to want to keep in-house and keep available only to your internal staff versus have the ability to share it outside the organization. So now we could share this out. Here it is. And done. And now I've shared this outside my organization, and I can collaborate not only with people inside, but out. And you can see that link presence showing up when I put in my own name. It was showing up with my Do Not Disturb status. So there you go. Product mix has now been shared out. So what else can I do with this document or content as I look at it? I can view the properties of the document, and I can look at, who edited it. Are there previous versions? Are there related documents or content types? So again, I can look at all of that here and check out all the information relating to that document. I can go ahead and edit the properties of this document and start changing some of that. Start changing the title of it, change the name, change what the content type is. And content types are an interesting concept if you're not familiar with them in SharePoint. And when we're training users, this is probably one of those areas where we spend the most time really teaching people. But it's also going to be the thing that's going to be, I think, the most transformative for your organization. I usually, when I'm doing this in-house at a company, what I'll say to them is, if I wanted every contract that you've written in the past 6 months, but that has not been executed yet, how do I get that? How do I get that data? Right? I'm the CFO. I need to figure out what we have out there, what we've actually written for contracts but have not been executed yet. Well, that's a hard thing to get. Usually when contracts are executed, maybe they're filed, maybe you have a good system for recording those, maybe they go into your ERP system, and that's great. But before they're executed, how do I find them? Well, this is where the idea of content types comes into play. It's a radical concept for users. There is no such thing as a Word document anymore. There is no such thing as an Excel spreadsheet. They do not exist. What does exist is, financial analysis, capital expenditure reports, TPS reports. Hopefully somebody giggled out there because you've seen the movie. If you haven't, go watch Office Space. We've got these different content types, and based on those content types, we're going to want to track different pieces of data. And this is where, as IT professionals, we start letting go of control. There's a concept that's been around in SharePoint for a while where IT is responsible for the infrastructure. IT is responsible for keeping the lights on as far as SharePoint is concerned. The content has to belong to the user. Meaning, who knows HR better, IT or HR? Who knows finance better, finance or IT, right? We have to hope inside of our organization that the users and the end users are the ones who can drive this content and understand what they're going to need and what they're going to need to find and what that metadata or that information should be. So if I mark this as a sales contract, that's going to flag it and cause certain actions to take place, and we can see that it's working on it. And as soon as I changed it to a sales contract, look what popped up. It's now saying, hey, I need a geography, I need a product category, and I need a company name, because we've identified that all sales contracts need to have this data. And as I start typing in, we can see that it actually starts searching for what we call taxonomy and folksonomy. So taxonomy is a set of language that will exist inside of your organization that is similar to every other organization like you. Every company who deals with Microsoft is going to share a similar set of language. Now, New Signature, we may have our own language that goes along with that, and that's called our folksonomy, right, or our particular language. So coming up with the taxonomy and the folksonomy, believe it or not, this might be one of the hardest things you run into, because you've now got to, depending on the size of your organization, because you've now got to get people in a room and get them to agree on what this language should be. So we're going to come up with our taxonomy for cell phones, and the company name is Northwind Traders. Voila. I have now saved and tagged that metadata to that object. So now if anybody searches for Asia or searches for Northwind Traders or searches for any of those words, you'll see that it will come up in search. And I'll give it a minute to compile in the search before I go ahead and try it. What are some of the other things we can do now that we've looked at properties? I can view this document in the browser or edit in the browser. So I now have the capability of viewing content right within the browser or editing within the browser. Microsoft now has Office for the iPad, so for people on certain types of tablets or mobile devices, if you're on a Pro or a Surface device, then you're capable of just having full-blown Office. If you're on an iPad, you can also have it, but maybe you're on a device, or maybe you just want to open up in the browser and just look at it real quick and not actually fully download it. Again, you have those capabilities now. All major browsers are supported, and again, it's just getting people used to this idea. And hopefully now you're starting to see too, there's 8 different ways to do the same thing, right? If I want to edit a doc, if I want to view it, if I want to tag it, if I want to create it, there's different ways to do it. And the reason is people work differently. So we want to give them as much flexibility and as much power as possible so that they can do their jobs the most effective way for them. So one of the other items I have in here is workflows. So I can create some workflows for an item, and you see here I have a demo review and approval workflow. So you can create different workflows within your different libraries that will trigger off different events. So as I triggered off that approval workflow, we'll see here in a second it shows up. There we go, initiated. So my review and approval has been started, and I can go in now and see the status of that. So I can see that right now Karen has kicked off the workflow, and right now there are no tasks assigned. It usually takes about 20 seconds or so for it to start assigning tasks. We'll see here in a second that it will load up and will come up with who has it been assigned to. Now, when we build these workflows, we can build them in multiple ways. We can do parallel workflows, meaning multiple approvals or multiple parties at a time, or multiple functions going on at one time. Or we can do a serial workflow, right, where it is, very serial process, one step followed by another in that whole approval workflow. And we can teach your users through the training on how to create these workflows. They're not that difficult to create, and due to time limitations today, we can't go ahead and show you everything. But these are the types of things we'll teach people how to create these different approvals so that each individual business unit can create its own workflow as it needs to, or its own approval process, or whatever it is. You can also standardize them and apply them based on the library type. So, we have account teams, but maybe you have projects, or you have different functional teams that have slightly different needs. And again, what do you give the users the capability of changing themselves? So as we go back in, see if it's created the task, and there it is. So Kelly Trout was the person selected to receive it. So Kelly has now received an email, and I can see that it's sitting there for Kelly, and I can see the due date is today, and status is not started. So again, Karen now can come back here and figure out, all right, has Kelly done it? We can also have this set up to do email alerts so that Karen, as the person who initiated the workflow, can be alerted when it's completed, right? Again, this can run the gamut depending on how you want to organize your workflows. So what else can I do with these documents while I'm in here? So I can follow a document. So now this gets into the manage by exception. So now I'm the Northwind Traders admin, right? I need to make sure I'm in full control of this. So as the Northwind Traders admin, I need to know if someone's going to make a change to any of my documents. So I can follow an individual document. I also have the capability, my screen toast will go away here first in a second. I also have the capability of following an entire library. So in this case, I want to follow the entire Northwind Traders site. As the Northwind Traders account manager, I need to know when documents are uploaded, when things are changed, when anybody's editing anything, because I'm the overall account manager. And it's an opt-in system. Just because I was assigned to be a member of this site doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to receive those alerts. So it's an opt-in system where users go in and select what they want to follow and what they want to get notified on when they're working. So while we're thinking about that and that notification, so all right, so now, Karen has gone through, she's edited a document, but, Karen does need to jump on a plane a little later on today and needs to have access to all of this stuff offline, just in case she doesn't get it done before she has to get in the cab and head over to the airport. So how can Karen get access to this data in an offline fashion? Well, the easiest way to do that is through this sync button. And this sync button is what will launch our OneDrive application and will connect us to our OneDrive sites. So here's my OneDrive, my SharePoint sites, and you can see I'm connected right now to my personal docs and the New Signature Learning site, which has all of our training material in it. So I can go ahead and access these in an offline capacity. I also am connected to my own personal OneDrive up in Office 365. So you can see all of my documents that are in my area. And again, I now have access to these in an offline capacity. Anybody who's familiar with the Groove technology that SharePoint Workspaces was built on in the previous version, it's the same technology, just moved forward a step. So all of that same ability to synchronize it offline. Again, everything you're seeing is also controllable. So if for compliance reasons you do not want a particular site to be able to be synchronized offline, you can prevent that in the settings. And again, this is where that line draws between what IT controls and what the users control. Right? IT will be responsible ultimately for security, compliance, and lockdown, and then we'll grant the users permission to do what they need to do. Okay. So again, we've looked at a lot of this stuff. The last one here is compliance details. So again, if I have compliance or compliance matrix, if there's a legal hold on the document, if it is exempt from a policy, we can check all of that and look to see what retention policies or anything else might be applied to it. And a lot of that's going to be based on the content type. You can find that content type becomes very important because we can dictate a lot of things. If something is a sales contract, we want to keep it for 7 years and then we want to delete it because that's what finance or legal says we want to do. If it's a HIPAA related document or if it's an HR related document, we've identified that as a content type. Massachusetts privacy law, I'm based up here in Massachusetts out of our New England office. Massachusetts privacy law says anything that contains customer or end user information such as a social security number and address has to be deleted after a year. So that is an identifiable content type where we want to start identifying things that have that information with certain content types so we can start applying policies. We could also do it at the library level and say at a library level that we want to start applying these policies. Okay, so we've gone through and done a lot of this. Now we actually want to create our contract renewal. So Karen, going through, she's looked at all the different documents, she's edited, she starts some different things. So now she's gone up here to Files, and look, here are the content types that you saw from our drop-down list when we were editing an item, but she wants to create a new item. And this is a key differentiator in understanding how SharePoint works with the rest of Office. So for any of you who use Office 2013, you'll be familiar with one fundamental change. If you think about Office 2010 or previous, and you open up Word, what opens up? A blank Word document. So in 2013, we changed, and no longer does a blank Word document open, but instead it launches to our templates page. Because how much content is truly created from nothing? Right? Very few people in your organization will actually create content from nothing. We instead want to create it from existing content. So we're going to identify those content types, but then when we connect our Word environment or our Excel environment to our SharePoint environment, we're now publicizing those templates so that that's what I see as a user. That's what I can identify as. So we've got a bunch of different content types that we've created, and one of them is what we call a document set. When we think about a lot of different things we create, new signature being no exception to that, when we create a contract, it's multiple documents. It's a professional services agreement. It is a contract. It is a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with it. There may be multiple documents that get created every time when we're doing one of these. So why don't we automate that process and create a brand new content type? So demo 2, because I already have a demo 1, demo content. And again, based on the fact that it is a contract renewal, we've already identified certain metadata, company name, Northwind Traders, geography, Asia, and product category, cell phones. So because we've created a content type, what we can do now is we can now automatically apply this metadata to all of the documents within the set. Okay, and we also happen to have a renewal date as an address option. Now again, these can be either free-floating text fields or, as you've seen here, drop-down lists and predetermined lists, depending on how you want to do it. Free-form text can sometimes get a little dangerous because it can lead to spelling errors, so something doesn't get searchable correct, or people don't use the right tag. So that controlled version is I think a better way to go. But again, you know your organization better than I do. So we've got these new content types, we've got these new documents, and again, I can go into any one of these and start looking at it, and look, we can preview it, and this is the correct one. So Andy, you can go ahead, and Andy's going to play the role of Casey Hicks, who is also going to edit this document, because we need one of our colleagues to help edit this document. So Andy's going to go ahead and go in on his machine. He's going to log in to the Northwind Trader site, go in, open up this content document set, and we're going to edit the sales proposal document. So I'm going to head and edit this.
All right, I'm just browsing to that document now, Chris.
Yep. So when I open it up, because I chose to edit it, it launched open in Word, and you can see that it created all of this content. We're going to see here in a minute that Andy is going to come up, and we're going to see Andy come in. So I'm going to start editing this paragraph here. And then as soon as Andy logs in, what we'll see is right here in the lower left-hand corner is where you're going to want to watch when, oh, and there he is. Casey Hicks is now editing the document. So I now see Casey is in there, and you'll notice as soon as Casey came in, the paragraph I was editing, you'll notice this bracket appeared right around it. So when we do multi-editing, it does different levels of locking depending on the document. So in the case of Word, it does paragraph level locking. So it's going to lock the individual paragraph that a person is editing. So if Casey or Andy goes down and starts editing product overview or something else, we're going to see that different areas that Casey will start to edit. Oh, and so direct competitors. So there I can see Casey is now editing that section, and it's now locked off from me. I can't edit it because Casey is editing that document. And again, that presence indicator is going to show up here. I could IM Casey from right within the document or figure out what's going on. In the case of Excel, it's going to do it's going to do cell level locking. So it's going to lock individual cells for editing. In the case of PowerPoint, it's going to do slide level locking today. So it's going to lock down the whole slide that's being edited. In the next update, they're going to change that to object level locking, where it is going to be a particular text box or image picture, right? Not the whole slide, so that two of us can be editing the same slide at a time. So it's going to move to object level locking from right now it's at slide level locking. So we've got this, great ability to co-author and co-edit. And if you think about this, a great example I use is, all of our documents are collaborative. There might be 4 or 5 different people working on it at any given point. We don't have to go through that serial process of me making an edit and then sending it over to Andy for him to make an edit, or vice versa, and then wait for the next person. We can all make our edits at the same time. One other new feature that's in the roadmap that is coming, you'll notice what it's not doing is it's not showing me what Casey's typing at this moment. It's telling me updates are available. I have to refresh in order to see those edits. So when I refresh, I'll see Casey's edit. So it doesn't show me what Casey's typing while they're typing it. Now, if you ask me in particular, I am not a fan of this, but I learned long ago as a presenter to not try and assume that what I like is what everyone likes. So there's a new feature coming where you will be able to see what the person is typing while they're typing it, right? So it's just a question of how you collaborate, and is it really that collaborative where I'm going to be correcting you while you're typing? And again, you can argue back and forth whether or not that's of value, but that's coming in the next update to SharePoint. So when we look at the back office here, you'll see that I've got all of this metadata and tags that are available. So, I can put in different tags, I hate hashtags, and I keep using that one because it's a good one to search, or, camping. I can just start putting random words, and these tags are more of a free-form text field. I can put in different comments. I can see who the authors are. I can show the properties. I can manage versions, so I can see the different versions of the document. So I can see that there's a 1.0 created by Karen. 4 minutes later, there was an autosave that was done, and if I have permissions, I can jump back and look for different things. So again, I can choose to protect the document, restrict who has access, restrict who has ability to edit, restrict who has ability to print or copy. I can send a message to everyone currently editing it, either via email or instant message. Hey, can everybody get out of this? I think it's good to go. So again, I can see all, when I click on show all properties, again, subject, category, status of the document. Some of these can be mandatory. You can see some are choice fields, some are free-form text fields. So ready to go. Voila. So now I've updated this document, and think of all of this content, which is also now all searchable. So what we've hopefully stepped through here over the past, 30 minutes or so is shown you some of the different things that we can do as an organization to collaborate and co-work together. So now I've saved up the document. And one last thing I want to show you. So we've got this document. If we follow our whole sort of workflow through, I'm now ready to send this out. And again, I can send it out and share it out just like I did the other document. And that's great, but maybe it's been disabled. I'm not allowed to share outside of my organization. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new email item here. And I'm going to take my new email item, I'm going to pin it right there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, all right, I need to email this document out. I'm just going to click, of course it went away on me, click and drag and drop that right in there. So I have the ability to click and drag from the browser, drop it into other places, and vice versa. I can take a document and drag it back in and drop it into a particular document library. Okay, so I have the ability of doing click and drag from the browser into other applications so that, again, I need to share this document out. I'm ready to send it. Do I like to do click and drag like I've always done? Do I like to attach via using the attach button? I can do so by including an attached file, and when I go to do that, I can just go to my SharePoint library and grab whatever item I want if I'm used to doing it that way. Or I can go ahead and click on share and do it that way. Again, 5 different ways to send out this document. So now Casey's done her contract and sent it out for the customer, and we were able to get all that done, in a couple of hours time. So when you think about this, hopefully we've shown you some of the useful tools that are available to you and the types of things that we would teach your users in our trainings, and gotten the ideas flowing. So I'll turn it back over to Andy, just sort of wrap up and talk about some of the offerings we have. But again, any questions in the Q&A, let me know. And this is the type of demo we do for end users just to get them thinking, because a lot of times within an organization, we find that education is really the key, and that users aren't aware of half, maybe not even 30% of what these applications are capable of doing. And involving users early and often in these types of processes is key to SharePoint's success. So that way they can articulate what's going to work for them, what are the workflows, how do they use it, and we can build these workflows and structure around how your users are going to use the system. All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Andy.
All right, Chris, thanks a lot for that excellent demo. So I'm going to bring back the slide presentation. So if you can't see the slides, just click on the Content Stage tab in the bottom left corner of the presentation. And now we're going to specifically go over some of the training offerings that New Signature has around SharePoint. So when you're adopting SharePoint in the organization, there's really 3 facets of training to consider. There's training for the end user audience, for power users, and for administrators. So the first type of training that we put out is end user training. And this is for the majority of the staff. So this applies to everyone that's going to be using SharePoint. And we have a three-pronged approach that we use to accomplish a facilitation and a broad adoption of a SharePoint rollout. And the number one approach we use are orientation sessions. These are traditional classroom training where we'll do 30 to 60 minute demos and trainings of SharePoint from an end user perspective, just like Chris did, but less on the advanced features and more targeted on what you need to do to get up to speed to accomplish your day-to-day work in SharePoint. And we can do those remotely, such as this, or we can do them on site at your office. For those, typically the top 10% of your company, the busy executives who are unable or unwilling or for some other reason just are not going to go to a formal training session, we can do a desk side tutorial where we will have one of our trainers go right to their desk, 10 or 15 minutes when they're free, give them a personal tutorial on what they need to know, and we'll do it right on their devices. So if they have a laptop and maybe an iPad and a mobile phone, we can show them right there what they need to know. It's quick, it's personal, it's high touch, and they're effective. And then to reach even deeper into the organization for people who perhaps not an executive or an executive assistant, but still maybe aren't going to go to a formal session for one reason or another, what we can do is set up a learning lab station at your office. So this is a station that we'll set up with devices that are connected into SharePoint. It'll be staffed with one of our instructors and consultants so people can drop by informally, see how SharePoint works, and get their questions asked. This really helps to increase the exposure that we have into the organization to promote the rollout and the adoption of the technology. And we can use them to cross-promote each other. So in the orientation sessions, we're going to promote, hey, if you have additional questions, feel free to stop by our learning lab. It's going to be set up Wednesday all day in the break room. And then people who stop by and we're able to pull them in and engage them a bit, we can say, hey, if you're looking for some more formal training, we're going to have a session this Thursday from 2 to 3 in conference room B. I'd love for you to stop by. So pretty simple approach for end user training. We just like to make sure that we have as much exposure as possible into the organization to increase the adoption of the technology so you can get a return on investment for it. Then for administrators or power users, since SharePoint is such a deep product, we need to take a bit of a different approach there. So what we do are 2-day workshops where your staff will work hand in hand with one of our SharePoint experts and trainers, learning the ins and outs of each component of SharePoint, and not only how it works and how to implement it, but how to use it to effectively solve business challenges. What we recommend is to not only give that style of training to the IT staff so they can do the administration, but is to really take 1 or 2 representatives from every business unit to give them that training to empower them to run their own SharePoint sites. And the reason that is so valuable is that if only IT knows how to do this stuff, then Karen in marketing may have a business challenge and she is never going to submit a request to enable the SharePoint feature to solve that challenge for her because she's not going to know that SharePoint's capable of doing it. Because you're empowering different members of each business unit to facilitate the different components of SharePoint, they're going to recognize the business challenges that their peers are having and say, hey, I can solve this in SharePoint. Give me 15 minutes and let me spin up a workflow for you, a new site, a custom lookup table. And that is really going to evangelize SharePoint throughout your organization. And then finally, we all know IT is too busy. So having people in each business unit that can run their own sites rather than having to submit all those requests up to IT, it removes the burden from IT and it removes them out of the equation as a bottleneck. So changes can actually get done when people need them to get done. All right. Does anyone have any questions either about the training offerings or about the SharePoint platform on what it can do and how it can be used to solve your business challenges? If so, just click the Q&A tab, answer your questions, and we can unmute your microphone and start a discussion. Okay, well, if there are no questions, you're free to go. If anyone does have a question, feel free to hang on the line and go ahead and just enter your question in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer it. If anyone has any more questions or would like more information, just reach out to info@newsignature.com, and we'd be happy to start a dialogue.